They attacked a Jewish boy with a knife here. They stripped him and left him lying there.
A growing number of Jews in France no longer feel safe there. Thousands have already emigrated.
Do we really have to flee due to anti-Semitism? Just because we're Jews? It makes me want to cry.
We give the victims advice and accompany them to the police. We also provide them with a lawyer and psychological counseling where necessary.
An afternoon in November. Sami Gozlan and his wife Monique have just landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport in their old hometown, Paris. 4 years ago, the couple immigrated to Israel after Sami had received a series of death threats. But he comes back to France every few weeks. For the 77-year-old former policeman, the fight against anti-Semitism has become a personal mission.
Seatbelt, please.
This time they will be spending a whole week in Paris. While Monique will be enjoying time with their grandchildren, Sami, as always, has no end of appointments. He's spent months planning a meeting for victims of anti-Semitic attacks.
Of course, my family would prefer me to stay home. But I'm going to be very busy all week, so there won't be much time for them. That's just how it is. I found myself a mission, and it's one I have to complete.
A
family are used to it. They'll be happy to see him, but they know he won't have much time.
The Gozlans will be staying with their son and his family, as they always do when they're in Paris. First, they catch up with their grandchildren's school grades, a bit like in the old days when they all lived in the same city.
Sure, it's hard being so far away, but we talk on the phone a lot to keep in touch.
Deciding to leave the country, like the Gozlans did, is something a lot of French Jews do these days. France is home to the largest Jewish population in Europe and the third largest in the world after Israel and the US. In many parts of Paris, Jews express their identity and religion openly and, it would seem, confidently. Kosher bakeries side by side with kosher butchers and restaurants. And Orthodox Jews who pray openly on the streets. But a series of fatal attacks has left an increasing number of Jews now fearing for their safety in France. The district of Sarcelles now has a memorial to commemorate the attack on a kosher supermarket in 2015, in which 4 Jews were murdered. Around 30,000 Jews are reported to have already left France for Israel. Others have been moving from the suburbs to city centres because they feel safer there as Jews. It is now 8:30 in the evening. Sami Gozlan has come to the Les Lilas area of the city to meet the victim of an anti-Semitic attack. Stella Bensignor moved here only recently.
Alors venez, Monsieur Gozlan, regardez, voilà.
You haven't unpacked yet.
I have unpacked my things for the bathroom. These are my plates and everything I need for Shabbat.
A few months ago, unknown individuals broke into her apartment and vandalized it. The perpetrators scratched anti-Semitic slogans into the doors of her car and slashed the tires. The police advised her to leave her apartment immediately.
It takes time to really settle in.
And a lot of work.
The most important thing is that you're now in safety.
Voilà, c'est ça que je dis, Monsieur Gozlan.
We pay a high price for this anti-Semitism. Okay, we weren't physically injured. But I have to ask myself why. Just because we're Jews? That's actually what the problem is. It makes me want to cry. We used to have a quiet life. Sometimes I can't take it anymore.
You have to be strong.
At least you're here now. Gozlan won't leave us alone here. Ever since it all happened, he's sent me messages every single week asking how we're doing. He also wants me to talk about my experiences at the meeting with other victims.
I think talking about it is a form of therapy.
The next morning, Gozlan is on his way to the office set up with some like-minded friends. His mobile phone never stops ringing, effectively his own hotline for Jews in distress. New cases arrive on an almost daily basis, as the work continues to pile up for the volunteers.
Even when Sam is in Israel, he calls several times an hour. He might be in Israel, but essentially he's with us here in the office.
They gather here every day, providing advice and comfort to victims and putting them in contact with lawyers. Their work also involves raising awareness about anti-Semitism among the public. Some of the alerts they receive come from the general public, like this cartoon they've just received by email.
Someone sent me this poster asking us to do something about it. You can see an arm with the name Rothschild, which is supposed to symbolize Jewish financial power. And that arm is controlling President Macron like a puppet, threatening a French citizen.
The poster is by a right-wing nationalist group that posts from an address outside France. They discuss what to do. They say Jews in France are threatened by both Islamists and right-wing radicals.
One group accuses the Jews of being on the side of Israel and, as such, against the Palestinians. And the other group believe that the Jews rule the world.
Des citoyens qui semblent diriger le monde.
But it's the same hatred. Both groups want to see the Jews disappear and to dominate and destroy them.
But sometimes the paperwork has to wait because Sami is eager to hit the streets where the people are. He feels that Paris has changed a lot in recent years. A number of Jewish-run stores have closed, he says, especially in the banlieues. And the few that do still exist have armed military for protection.
This is Rue Philippe Auguste in the 11th arrondissement, where Madame Mireille Knoll lived, an elderly woman who was murdered. She was stabbed to death.
A Holocaust survivor reportedly killed by a Muslim neighbor of North African descent. The murder in April 2017 caused outrage across the country and divided opinion. Some attributed the crime to drug addiction. For others, it was murder fueled by anti-Semitism. For Sami Gozlan, one thing is beyond doubt. The case further increased many Jews' fear of being attacked. Daniel Knoll can still not believe what happened to his mother. In his apartment outside Paris, he has boxes full of treasured mementos.
How can you kill an 85-year-old woman? She was old and sick and disabled. So much hatred.
His mother had managed to survive the Holocaust as a child, only to be murdered in old age, probably on account of her Jewish heritage. For Daniel Knoll, intolerable.
There's nothing worse than human stupidity, racism, and anti-Semitism. There are so many issues that are genuinely important. But people fight each other over stupid things like religion. It's unbearable.
C'est insupportable.
The authorities were never able to clarify the killer's motive, Sami Gozlan tells us as he heads off once more for the banlieue. What nobody can dispute is that the number of attacks on Jews in France has been on the rise, by almost 70% in the past year alone.
Right here is where 93 begins, or 9-3.
The 93rd département is notorious for its concrete housing projects, unemployment and violent crime. This is the area where Sami Gozlan spent almost 40 years as a detective.
They attacked a Jewish boy with a knife here. They stripped him and left him lying there. They took off his pants and his shirt, and they left him there all night.
Sami himself received threats while living in Paris. His car was set on fire. In 2013, he and his wife decided to leave France.
I was the victim of an anti-Semitic attack. I also had threats from racist and Islamist organizations. Eventually, I was scared that my family and I would get into serious trouble because of my fight against anti-Semitism.
Today, Sami is meeting his old friend Hassan Chalgoumi, the imam at the mosque in the suburb of Drancy. He's one of the few imams to speak out openly against growing anti-Semitism among Muslims in France. The two used to meet every few days for tea.
Hassan was the first to recognize the danger for French Jews. He told me about young men involved in criminal behavior who said they wanted to repent. They asked him if killing Jews would allow them to enter paradise. I was shocked. I thought, if things are that bad, then Jews in France are genuinely in danger.
Sadly, it's something a lot of people don't want to hear. They think that talking about it will play straight into the hands of right-wingers, but the opposite's true. If French people don't hear Muslims condemning anti-Semitism and the murder of Mireille Knoll, then I can understand them becoming prejudiced towards Muslims.
It's that kind of frank talking that has also put the imam himself in danger. He now has police protection after being repeatedly threatened and attacked by radical Islamists. This photo is from 2010, with bodyguards bringing Chalgoumi to safety after an attempted attack. His family now also live abroad due to the danger they face in France.
The Islamists don't like this camaraderie. They're sects like the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafists. They don't like seeing an imam reaching out his hand in dialogue. They've broken into my place twice, which is why I swap apartments every 2 days.
The group that attacked him was the Sheikh Yassin Collective, the father of violent, terrorist Palestinian Islamism. They're extremely dangerous. We asked the police for help.
For 4 months, they protested right outside here. They broke down the door and came inside. They shouted that we ought to die. It was a difficult time. And why did it all happen? Because an imam reached out to the Jewish community.
Chalgoumi's commitment has earned him derision among certain parts of the Muslim community, who dismiss him as the Imam of the Jews. Unperturbed, he assures Sami that he will be attending the meeting the next day, bringing together victims of anti-Semitic attacks. Sami takes a spontaneous decision to pay a visit to the small Arab market outside the mosque. This is his old patch, a place where he's still known as the kosher cop for some locals. He's wearing traditional Jewish headgear, not out of religious conviction, but rather out of defiance, in response to the attacks in recent years.
I'm wearing it as a test to see what happens. But I don't think it'll bother anyone.
Sami grew up in Algeria, and he always felt at home among Arabs. One vendor becomes aggressive after seeing our camera team filming. It's not us, but Sami that he threatens, forming a mock pistol with his hands and pointing it at him.
What are you doing here?
Why are you threatening me? Why?
I pay for this stand. I work here.
There's no need to start threatening people.
Then Sami diffuses the situation with something that also helped him in the old days, his Algerian heritage and fluency in Arabic. The man is suddenly much friendlier.
Where are you from?
Constantine.
Oh, Algeria.
The vendor is reluctant to explain his aggressive behavior. But it certainly had nothing to do with Sami being Jewish.
I don't care if you're Jewish. For me, everyone's the same. They're all brothers for me.
Speaking the same language and knowing the same codes makes everything a lot easier. Back then, when I was in the police, speaking Arabic was always a big help. Plus knowing about Islam, what to respect and what is forbidden.
Imam Hassan Chalgomi is likewise a champion of dialogue. He's come to the main synagogue in Paris with a group of young Muslims.
It's very brave of you to come here today. I imagine it can't be easy for you.
It's a nice gesture.
There are probably a few people in your neighborhood who aren't too keen on you going to a synagogue and talking to Jews. I can imagine that's how the response would be.
The young Muslim visitors say he's right. They know people who would never consider doing such a thing.
This is my first time in a synagogue. I had no idea how it looked on the inside.
I expected it to be smaller and more compact.
For all parties, it's a meeting of particular significance.
l'Opéra de Paris qui vient plus concentré, mais là je vois que c'est vraiment l'architecture, elle est vraiment très très belle et je suis très content que vous êtes là aujourd'hui.
I'm really glad to see you all here today. We're used to seeing Jews and a lot of Christian visitors on our tours for the public, including school groups. But sometimes Muslim parents don't give permission for their children to come along.
By the time Sami arrives at his son's apartment for dinner, the pizza is almost cold. That is something his family are used to. He was always busy when he was with the police department. These family get-togethers have become rare since the parents moved to Israel. Regis Gozlan and his wife Miriam talk regularly about the pros and cons of also emigrating to Israel. For now, at least, they're staying put.
We have jobs here. I like the schools. We're French. It will be difficult for us adapting to the culture and the schools over there. Sami's granddaughters tell him they have not yet had any threats.
And your friends have never experienced anything like that?
Once, I guess. But it wasn't that bad. There was this man outside the synagogue who called us dirty Jews.
Their mother has a different take on events and reports on developments at the Jewish school.
It's crazy to see how pupil numbers are decreasing. There used to be 22 kids per class. They were full. Now it's only 16 or 17. And after each school year, they say goodbye to pupils headed for Israel. Plus, you're increasingly hearing about someone else who's gone. You didn't used to hear that so often. And you say, what? Him too? A lawyer who's now left. Really successful and an expert in their field here. And now they'll have to start from scratch in Israel. You know it's serious when someone like that leaves. It shows the gravity of the situation. For every one of us.
You don't have to go to Israel. But if you do, you shouldn't have to flee. If you have to leave, leave. If you want to stay, stay. But Jews shouldn't have to leave like they used to, because they were driven out. When we left Algeria, we fled.
The meeting of victims is scheduled to take place this evening, the conference that Sami Gozlan has been planning for months.
Après un reportage inique sur France Télévisions, suscitant la haine d'Israël.
That's the news on the radio about the event.
Sur les derniers crimes anti-juifs. Mireille Knoll, hypercachère, agression violente.
Sami Gozlan has brought together victims, families and lawyers for the meeting, and journalists. They hope to finally make anti-Semitism a big issue. Imam Hassan Chalgomi is among those attending. And Stella Bensignor. She'll be taking to the stage to talk about the attacks she's suffered. But first, she takes the opportunity to have a heart-to-heart with the government's Commissioner for Anti-Semitism, Frédéric Potier. Inside the hall, 400 people listen attentively as Stella gives a moving account of the burglary, the slashed tires, and the Star of David etched into her car.
The police told us to leave the apartment right away. I had to start all over again. I just wanted to get away from there. So, it does exist. I am one of these cases. I had to flee because of anti-Semitism. Here are the photos of my car. At first I didn't get it. The gas station attendant had to explain that it was a Star of David, Israel, written big across my car door.
Étoile de je ne sais quoi, je ne sais pas. C'est grâce au pompiste en fait, c'est lui qui s'est aperçu parce que...
As the event draws to an end, the government commissioner promises that action will be taken. A new law criminalizing online hate speech and a specially selected team tackling anti-Semitism in schools. For Sami and his fellow volunteers, a success. When the Gozlans set off for the airport 2 days later, they have more luggage than they arrived with.
Wow.
Our suitcases are full when we get here and full when we leave as well.
One of the cases is packed with French cosmetics and French chocolates. Home comforts for when she misses her old life in Paris. The 6-day trip was packed with meetings and appointments. But the couple do wonder how much longer Sami will be able to keep up this pace.
When he gets home in the evening, he's normally pretty tired.
Yes, I'm a bit tired. But you have to keep going. Unfortunately, the fight has to continue. But I think we'll make it. I hope we'll make it.
And the Goslans have already booked their next trip back to Paris.